Hello, everyone. And today we're back for another WFA interview, and I have two guests with me today. Both are professionals who work in the exciting and interesting areas of sports psychology and physical performance. And I'm delighted to introduce Erin Prior and Christy Langley. Hello, both. How are you?
All right, very good, thank you.
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Certainly trying my best to maintain everything and keep going and stay as busy as can be. So thank you very much both for attending. I suppose before we start, it would be good to find out about you and what your individual backgrounds are in sport. So Erin, if we start with you, how did you get involved in sport and growing up, and what's your background?
So for me, my personal sport that I do is archery, and I've done that for about 15 years now. So obviously coming up through being a junior and now competing as a senior. So that's probably the first interest I really had in sports. I think I was about 11 when I started. So that really got me interested in just competing, just going and competing against other people and just experiencing all sport has to offer, really. So I think that's where I probably got the interest in sport from. And then from a psychology point of view, I was always interested in how people act and react to things and what their motivations are for doing things maybe in certain ways. And I think it probably just came together when I was a little bit older, studying sport and studying psychology separately. And by then, I guess I'd been competing for a bit longer and was just sort of getting up to competing internationally. And so kind of put the two together. And so that's really how I've come to be in sports psychology, really. So it's kind of a mix of my own sport and that in my own background as a performer. And then just that kind of more academic, I suppose, interest in psychology and the merger of those two, really.
And was that a standard topic and subject for you to study at school, or was it something that through your sport that you thought and it triggered an interest in you to take that further?
So I didn't start studying psychology until college. And it wasn't even going to be originally one of my kind of original options. So I'm kind of fortunate that I did end up doing it. But yeah, I think probably just from when I was younger, I think just being a bit of a nerd really and reading books on stuff like body language and all these different things that kind of, I don't know, just pop up, I suppose. And just being really interested in that. And then, yeah, having the option to do psychology at A level. So that's kind of where it came in. And I think just doing that, and obviously at that point, that wasn't sports psychology, that was just kind of straight psychology. But being sort of interested in that and behaviours and all the theory behind it, and then doing A-level PE as well, it kind of just seemed a kind of natural fit having been in sport, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of A-level, certainly from my own experience as well, A-level PE tends to be that direction, and then that kind of molds you into where we all start from. So thank you, Erin. Chrissy, same for you then. What was your start in life, and what did you do and play growing up, and then
mine was a real mixed bag. So I started when I was about 7 years old, and I think my dad was really interested in getting me into sport. So I started with his sport, so it's archery, jiu-jitsu, and then I started going down the line where I kind of started doing things I wanted to do. So I went into gymnastics for a few years, but realised I wasn't great at that. So then when we got to high school, in obviously the UK, it's hockey and netball, so that's kind of what I went with. Played for Wales for a while, like under 21s, as goalkeeper in hockey. But when I went to uni, I kind of just drifted away from that and went into netball. So at the moment, I'm playing netball, but who knows? That'll probably change, don't me? So, but really into the gym at the moment. All the training around the different sports, I find dead interesting. Same with Erin, really. At school, I did the sport science as my A levels, and then obviously PE, GCSE. But it's one of those things I've always loved doing it. But at high school, I didn't really think there was a job in it. but as I progressed, I found out there's an undergrad course local to me doing sport and exercise science, and there's just so many different pathways you could take. So I ended up doing the physiology master's degree, and I absolutely loved it. I just find the human body is just so interesting in how it works, so differently for everybody. So the research around physiology and in sport really for me is just such an exciting topic area, and I really do love doing it.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's why I wanted to get you both on today, obviously, to talk about two very interesting, exciting areas. You know, you've got the psychology element and you've got the physiology side of things. So I suppose for those that are going to watch this interview and that aren't aware, we'll start with you, Erin. Can you summarize what your area of expertise of sports psychology is about?
Yeah, so essentially it's just looking at everything in terms of the mental side of sport. So whether that be performing under pressure is always a big one that people kind of come to you for support with. Might be building confidence, it might be working within a team. So all of the kind of the mental and the mindset aspect of having to perform, you know, even having to train regularly and stay motivated. And I think for me, you know, in sport for a long time now, we've been really and rightly focused on the physical aspect of sport. But I think more recently, in the past however many years, we have been sort of turning our attention a bit more to the sort of mental aspect, which I think obviously I'm going to say is really important. I feel is really important as well, just to complement all of the kind of physical attributes that you need. And I think, you know, the margins are getting smaller and smaller in sport, and so I think we need to look to new places to where we can develop, and I think sports psychology is still one of those kind of up and coming areas. So yeah, I think as well, the one thing I would say in terms of sports psychology in particular is there can be this misconception that it could be quite negative, or you might only come to a sports psychologist if you have an issue or a problem or challenges with something. And of course, we can help people who are maybe finding certain things challenging and work with them on that. But for me, it's also about developing the strengths of an athlete or a coach or a parent, and look at what are they already good at and helping them to keep building on that. And I think that's just an important point to make, because I think some people can be put off a little bit by the idea of going to see someone about sort of the mental side. I think there's maybe just less awareness of that than maybe the physical side. So to kind of get across the fact that it is building on strengths as well, I think is a really important point. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Chrissy, were you with the physiology side of things?
So at the moment, I'm going into my final year of my PhD, which is focusing on musculoskeletal health, particularly in para athletes. So we've got a mixture. So my actual studies on cerebral palsy, but I've worked with the blind. I've worked with all the deaf women at the moment, so they're like my main team. And obviously, some people will have seen me in the powerchair pathway with the regional emerging talent, which is a really new thing. The FA's currently brought up, which is really exciting. And it's one of those areas that I've wanted to work in, and I would have loved to have done my research within that population. But the FA wanted me to look at how vitamin D is affecting musculoskeletal health in their ambulatory England teams at the moment. So I'm hoping, I've got all these ideas for research later on, which is what I'm hoping to stay in, and as well as doing some of the physical performance side. But we'll see in a year's time once I've finished and got my doctorate. But I'm hoping to just carry on, keep working with some teams, keep teaching them about how to stay fit and healthy lifestyle, around nutrition and physical activity, and we'll see where we go from there. Yeah,
absolutely. And a good thing about obviously the powerchair community is, you know, about a third of our community are players with cerebral palsy. So it'd be interesting to see in time to come kind of that comparison and any crossover between kind of the powerchair players and the ambulatory players. So that would be an interesting mix for you going forward.
Yeah.
So I suppose, obviously, you've touched on it, both of you, briefly, and Christy, we'll start with you. But how did you get involved in disability football and para football?
So, to be honest, it started, I was doing my master's degree, and at the time I was working with sedentary people, so elderly people that just did a lot of sitting, and I wasn't massively interested in that topic area. I think it's just something I'd fallen into. And one of my lecturers actually works with a lot of people at the Neuromuscular Centre in Winsford, so people with degenerative muscular diseases, Duchenne's, spinal muscular atrophy, things like that. And he said, oh, we're actually looking for volunteers to work at the centre who also had a power chair football team that used to train at my uni. So I used to help set up and watch them play on a Tuesday at the union, and I'd go and volunteer on a Wednesday. And then when I got my PhD with the FA, obviously they'd seen that I'd worked with this population before, and they put me forward to kind of be the physical performance lead for the power chair football, which was it's such an exciting prospect because it is so new. And it's a shame about COVID at the moment, because I think Woodview Camp's coming up soon, so I'm a bit gutted about that. But yeah, that's predominantly how I was introduced to the power chair football side of things.
Nice. So, well, you started, I suppose, from kind of that grassroots level and then moved up the pathway. And I suppose, Erin, it's the opposite way for you, because you actually started right at the top with the seniors and then are kind of moving down to support, aren't you, in that way?
Yeah. So, I guess we've probably just gone at it from an opposite point of view. But yeah, I started with the England team, I think it's coming up to 2 years ago now, which seems to have really flown. So I was introduced to kind of, I guess, this side of the FA through my supervisor when I was training. So he is one of the sports psychologists for the cerebral palsy England team with the FA. So he kind of put me and some other people forward for the role, and I was fortunate enough to get the role. So yeah, the end of 2018, and so then started on training camps with the team and working obviously towards Finland last year. And then I think from there, really, it's kind of like you're saying, it's grown. I've done some work. I know Chrissy's been where I've been working at the regional pathways, which has been really good. And some of that's power chair, but some of that's kind of CP and other sort of para football streams as well. So that's been really interesting. So I did a bit of work there, and then I think really just kind of being around in the environment, around different power chair players and clubs and in the community. And so this year I would say it's particularly taken off with working with the different teams across England, and so working at, I guess, club level. So yeah, I've kind of come at it from a different way, but it's nice to be sort of more integrated into the power chair community now than I probably was, at the start, really.
Yeah, and I suppose now you're both getting that combination of coming at it from all different sides and seeing how, I suppose, how the community is and how we kind of work. How do you think then, from in relation to your particular fields of expertise, then, for those that maybe aren't aware, how can you explain how psychology and obviously how physiology and physical performance, how can that benefit power chair players?
Oh, who wants to go first? Chrissy,
I'm happy to go first. Yeah. So at the moment, obviously, because of all the impairments being so complex and different within the power chair community, I think it's kind of looking at the basics from a physical performance part of point of view for me at the moment, and just kind of gaining that trust with players. And at the moment, really, people will see in the next week at my seminar that we'll be talking a bit on nutrition and kind of respecting our bodies and what we're putting in them. So I think especially with power chair, we want to be, and this kind of links with the psychology aspect of it, our cognitive function needs to be on it. And I see a lot at the talent pathways, people turning up with Coca-Cola as their main drink, which most people know it's my pet hate. It's so bad for you. I see it, I'm like, oh, okay. So it's like just making them make healthy choices. So for example, bringing water, getting hydrated, like from just drinking healthier drinks, so that when they're playing football, their cognitive function's going to be better, their reaction times will be improved, their thought process, their ability to make the decisions at that point in time is going to be quicker, as well as quality of life at home. So if you eat well, you will feel better. You get your vitamins and minerals, particularly during the winter months. I'm obsessed with vitamin D because of my study, but people need to think about potentially supplementing this month. And it's things I can provide on physical performance aspect. If people have questions about certain nutritional aspects, I can offer. It's also quite new in the research. So doing some form of physical activity at home. I've done a few training programs for the England powerchair players who were offered, the whole team were offered, and we had some guys come forward. I spoke to them about what their impairment was, and we designed like bespoke training programs to suit them. And we kept going back with that and working what was suiting them, how long it was taking them to recover from programs, and then come back to it 6 weeks later to see if they were feeling any different. And it's kind of almost talking to players, working around them at the time and seeing what works for them and what's helping them at home, just to see if they're getting any improvements with just things like being able to pick cutlery up. I did work with a woman at the Neuromuscular Centre who we did a 6-week training program with, whose main aim was she had facioscapulohumeral dystrophy, and she was looking for basically an improvement in being able to brush her hair and drink a cup of tea, and she saw that after, and it's just little wins like that I'm after at the moment. And I'm hoping I can bring that to the team, but obviously because it is so new, I just mainly want to educate players, parents on all the new research that's out there and how it can benefit them.
And I think from my point of view, and part of the reason of having you both here today and kind of talking to you both is certainly in your instance, Chrissy, around, I suppose, potentially the mindset is that nutrition element. The mindset might be, well, that only relates to if I'm being physically active and I'm moving around. And some of the power chair community might think, well, that doesn't relate as much because obviously it's a game played where you sat down. However, I think you nailed it straight away where you said how what the nutrition and what you put into your body has such a direct impact on how you think and how your brain is functioning, that to be able to make those decisions on the pitch and to react quickly and to decide whether to pass or to shoot, a large part of that will come down to what you are putting into your body through what you eat and through what you drink. And I think that you've said and commented on that so quickly, and that's a great message to emphasize in this interview. And I hope that when people watch this, they will then kind of attend your upcoming sessions, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And they can gain some insight into what they put into their bodies will then have a positive impact on them in terms of how they play, but also, like you mentioned, with everyday life as well.
Yeah, big deal. I think for me it's the quality of life at home as well. I really want people to realize that I'm not just saying, oh, it's football. It's I want you to have a healthier lifestyle at home and enjoy life more.
Fantastic, thank you. And Erin, for you, how can sports psychology benefit powerchair players and the community as a whole?
So I think one of the really nice things about psychology is it can be applied across everybody, so all sports, whether it's parasport or able-bodied sport, and obviously there's going to be individual differences within that, and things you need to consider, and how you deliver things might be slightly different depending on the group. But for me, I think that's a really good part of psychology, is it can be applied across all sports and disciplines. So for me, thinking about, I guess, key points that I've been working with the players with is things like building their confidence. I think that's a key part that lots of athletes come to sports sites for. I think it's one of the first things people mention is confidence. And I think even if you feel like you have good confidence levels, it can always be better, it can always improve. So things like just simple things like building confidence, and I think, you know, like Chrissy's saying, can actually help your quality of life day to day as well, because it can help you outside of sport. So I think really, although like we're both saying, really, we've got that performance focus a lot of the time with the teams, because that's how, I guess, competitive sport is. Both of our fields can be really applied to outside of sport, and I think that's one of the key messages I think to get across to the powerchair community. You know, it doesn't matter what level you're playing at, or even if maybe it's that you're coaching or that you're a parent or carer, these things can still apply to you as well. So I think to try and put them into practice both in sport and outside is really useful. But I guess just a bit more in terms of how sports psychology can help players in particular, it's thinking about you know, just your preparation as well. So a lot of the work I've done with the England team is thinking about maybe what they do currently to help prepare them for matches, and does that work well? And if so, why is that? What's helping you to perform? And if there are areas for improvement, where are they? What could you do to improve them? And so just working on your general approach. So whether that's using certain techniques before matches, before training to keep you calm, or to reduce your nerves, or to keep you energized, and again feeds back into what Chrissy was saying about nutrition as well. But all of these things and all of this preparation all ties in. So one of the main things I've been doing with England is looking at individually, how do they prepare, and as a team, how do they prepare, and how can they actually get that consistency. So if you can fall on something that works really well, trying to keep that consistent so that you can, I guess, optimize your performance consistently over time. So there's just so many areas, I think, could be here all day really for both of us, of how these things can really help you in sport. But I'd say, yeah, just anything to do with the mental side, whether it's nerves, working with others, you know, communication in your team, or decision making, all of these different areas, sports psychology can really help with that. So I think for me, it's just about kind of trying to find out where you want to work on things really. Where do you find those challenges, and then trying to kind of address those.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. I think there's some great key points by both of you there, so thank you. Erin, you touched on there about the senior team, and I suppose I've got to ask you, obviously with last year in the Nations Cup, you were there, so you had that kind of first-hand lived experience of being with the squad during that week. What, I suppose, just want to ask you kind of what, from your point of view and the way you were seeing it and stuff, what are some of your overriding memories of the competition as a whole, but, you know, working with the squad both kind of pre and during as well?
Yeah, so I guess to start off with what we were doing sort of before the tournament, so in the lead up, so obviously we had kind of monthly camps. I think it was maybe 6 months sort of in advance, so we were working together 1 weekend a month, so trying to kind of keep that all pulling together, and to keep sort of links between camps, I think can be quite challenging. But working on that, and working on one of the big pieces that we worked on was sort of developing a philosophy for the team, to kind of give them these, or to clarify their shared goals and their shared vision of what they wanted to achieve in the tournament, and how they might go about doing that. So I think that was one of our kind of key pieces of work that we did. And I think that at least from, I think, the players' perspective, what they fed back, that's been quite a good guide throughout the tournament when we were there. And for me, kind of key moments that stand out, I think, obviously they won the tournament, which was amazing, which I'll come to in a minute. But I think actually also some key moments before that in the lead up, and I think looking back on it, or maybe looking as a spectator, it's easy just to look at that final, look at the result and go, great, that was their tournament experience. But when you're actually out there, even though it went well and they won all but one match, there are ups and downs that you don't see when you're a spectator. And that was really interesting for me. For me, it's more about not necessarily kind of avoiding those ups and downs. Is more, how do you manage when things are challenging? And so one of the key kind of points that sticks out for me is we'd lost a match, I believe it was against France, sort of earlier in the week, and so then we had a match in the afternoon, and it was just how the team managed to build back from that, really. And I think that was a work in progress even on the day, because we were sort of, obviously we'd lost that match, we'd won all the ones quite convincingly, I think, up until that point. So it's how do you build back from those challenging moments? And it was difficult, and it did take you know, a bit of organisation, a bit of pulling everyone together and saying, right, let's actually, you know, regroup. Let's not let this moment define the rest of the tournament, which I think it could have easily done, to be honest. So kind of recovering from that moment, and then obviously then in the final going 2-0 down and then coming back to equalise and push it to penalties. To me, I'm almost more pleased with that than the actual win, because actually that resilience of coming back and not going, gosh, you know, we're 2-0 down, we're out of it, we're going home, to actually come back from that, to me, shows so much development in the team and commitment to what they were doing, commitment to how they were playing, and just going for it. And I think as a sports psych, that's like one of the main things that you can kind of hope for from the team. And obviously I was kind of sat on the sidelines, so not able to actually do anything at that point. You just kind of hope all the work comes together. So for me, that was the main point. And then obviously to win on penalties and to handle the pressure and, you know, the noise in the environment, I know the opposition sort of spectators were particularly vocal. So actually just managing that and holding their heads and pulling through, I guess those were key points. So although obviously that win was an amazing feeling, an amazing experience, I think also it's the kind of the challenges along the way and how they came through those that really kind of sealed it for me, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from witnessing the squad in previous years, whether it's the previous World Cup or the previous Nations Cup, and even when you go back to the World Cup before in 2011, I think the effect of you being involved was huge on the team and the squad as a whole, because in previous competitions those situations have arisen, and I think the lads would probably admit it, that they found those situations very tough, and they've probably they have struggled to cope psychologically within kind of that high intensity, high stakes environment. So when that happened last year, it was what, from a spectating point of view, it was one of those, oh, is it going to happen again? Or, you know, are we going to be the bridesmaid, never the bride type saying? But the resilience and the mental toughness and the determination that the players show just to, you know, play our way. We'll keep playing, we'll continue to play, and we will create chances, and we'll take those chances. And, you know, both of them came from defensive situations, and then a quick counter attack, showing that yes, that's what we're going to look to do and implement it. And just, I think it's a credit to them, obviously, for the work that you've done, that meant that, you know, whereas before they probably would have lost, and maybe lost a little bit heavier and conceded again, the mentality shift was different, and it changed, and it was actually, we're going to keep going. And I think you've just seen in my opinion, a shift in the mentality of the players now, to know that actually we've succeeded, we've done it, we know it works, and we'll keep going, which obviously stands us in really good stead for future competitions.
Hopefully, I think moving forward, if we can just use this obviously as a confidence boost, and like you say, that kind of evidence that we look for to say, actually, we've been in a tough situation, you know, that final, we didn't just kind of, it wasn't I guess, an easy match. You know, it wasn't just an easy, quick win. Whereas I think sometimes if it had been, maybe then when you do come up against those challenges in future, it's maybe you're not quite sure how to deal with it. Whereas I think it's actually probably done them a real favour to have a bit of a challenge and to have a bit of a struggle and to have to kind of push back from being the underdogs in that match, essentially. And, you know, again, to take it to penalties. And I know there was some controversy with some of the goals and things like that. And so to actually manage with all of that going on, again, like you say, shows such resilience that I think hopefully stands us in great stead for the future, because that's that evidence we need where we look and go, right, you know, moving on, looking towards Australia, hopefully at some point, you know, we can go in there and really challenge and come through those difficult moments. So yeah, hopefully that will be really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly once we return to normal,
yeah,
I'm sure you both are just like I am and everyone else, you know, just getting back to that activity, getting back to those camps, getting back to those talent pathway sessions and activities, and just, you know, fully embracing, you know, what we have missed, and, you know, we look forward to seeing again. So I suppose just to conclude with you both, kind of, how do you see the future with within your roles, and how you can continue to support a power chair, whether it's clubs, the WFA, or within the FA, whether it's senior or talent pathway? How do you see your roles evolving and moving forward to really have a long lasting effect? So we start with Chrissy.
So I must say this has been quite a main aim. As soon as I got the role with the talent pathway, my main aim is to be gradually able to progress and gain the trust with the players, and kind of obviously the education aspect of it from a young age, as well as obviously speaking regularly to the parents, so much so that I'll be able to progress with them to maybe join in an England camp one day and working with the seniors. I think that's a big aim for me. I really appreciate you getting me involved with this, Adam. It's been a really exciting experience for me as well. Thank you. But I'm hoping for a long-term aspect, to obviously continue to work with the teams, educate them, start seeing little changes where they're making better choices, with obviously the Coca-Cola drinks, and just little wins for me at the moment would be great. I'm really hoping to see a talent pathway camp in January. Like, I've been waiting for a camp so soon because I've got all these ideas to bring, but obviously nowhere to take them at the moment. So that's the main thing. And I would love to do some research into certain things, like obviously I could go into supplementation, on how to help players with quality of life over like immunity, staying healthy, and things like that. So I'm hoping to stay within this population, but like I say, we'll see, because the world's a crazy place right now, isn't it? So
Yeah, absolutely.
but I think
Erin?
oh, sorry.
all right, Chrissy, if you want to add anything.
No, I just saying the power chair for me is making it really exciting, and it's giving me something to look forward to, especially with the Wheelchair Football Association. So thanks for that.
Look forward to continue to working with you as well, Chrissy.
So yeah, so from a sports side point of view, obviously continuing to work with England and hopefully going to Australia at some point, which will be an amazing experience on all accounts. So working with them and actually just building on what we've already done over the past couple of years, when really we've had probably 6 months of really concentrated work. And we've done a few kind of Zoom sessions over kind of lockdown a few months ago. But other than that, you know, I think it's really trying to make our contact more consistent and trying to keep up the work, even if we have gaps between training camps. So really working towards that and working towards Australia and hopefully beyond. You know, for me, I feel working with the team, particularly at this level and in this community, such a great opportunity that I just want to like Chrissy, really keep going as long as you can. So we'll be old and grey, no doubt, if we get our way by the time we finish. But yeah, so carrying on with that. And I think also from the England point of view, probably working more with people like Chrissy and it being more integrated. I think at the moment, it's quite coaching on one side and a bit of psych on the side. And obviously we've got doctors and things there. But I think actually being more integrated with other professions and working with other professionals like Chrissy, I think that's when the team really comes together professionally, is when you're all collaborating. And like Chrissy says, there are links between nutrition and psychology. So if we can kind of collaborate on that, I think that kind of thing's really exciting, just working with new people. So I think that would be good. So so Jeff, if you're listening, that would be good. But yeah, and I think probably just from a wider kind of power chair perspective, I think, like we said, this year I've really got involved in the community more, and I've really enjoyed that and just learning more about the sport and meeting more people. So from my perspective, if I can keep doing that and, you know, keep I guess building those relationships and showing that yes, the England team use sports psychology, but actually it can be helpful at all different levels of the clubs, you know, whether it's just for participation and enjoyment, or whether you are kind of trying to push and get into those top teams, really just helping the sport integrate psychology into it, really. And I think if they can do that, they're ahead of quite a few sports, or kind of quite a few minority sports at the least. So yeah, so that's how I kind of hopefully see things panning out, really.
Fantastic, thank you both. And actually, you are currently, both of you, involved in some of the wellbeing workshops and the seminars that we're delivering at the moment. So Erin, you've touched and you've delivered a couple recently. Chris, you've actually got a couple coming up. So you just want to explain briefly about what you're going to be focusing on?
Yeah, so I've got one next Tuesday. We're focusing on kind of living the first part of living a healthy lifestyle from a physiologist point of view. So that's nutrition. It's going to look at hydration, how we should stay hydrated. I'm hoping to do some breakout rooms if I can get my laptop working. And then we'll obviously hopefully get on some nice group discussions and some debates. And then we can also look into just making good choices, kind of understanding what we're eating and what it does to our bodies. And then I've got a really lovely Kahoot quiz after, because I need to know if you've been listening or not. So
me included.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And Erin, you've delivered a couple already, and you've got a few coming up as well. So do you want to just briefly explain on those as well?
Yeah, so of course we've just had sort of recently the returning to training sessions for coaches and for players. So hopefully whoever's attended those have found those useful in terms of thinking about getting back into the sport and how to manage that transition. And then really we've got a couple coming up, just sort of more looking at optimizing well-being, really, and trying to just think about probably a bit of mental health, a bit of well-being. And I think that's particularly at the forefront because of obviously the pandemic and the impact it's had. So that's what we'll be focusing on kind of moving forward.
Fantastic. Well, again, both of you, massive thank you for your time. For everyone watching this video, you can check out WFA website and WFA social media for information on those upcoming workshops, and able to register online. And we'd like to see as many of you there as possible to be able to learn a little bit more about each of these respective areas. So I look forward to seeing you there. Just like to finish by saying again, thank you both so much for your time. Great insight from you on your respective fields, and look forward to seeing you face to face, hopefully soon, and continuing to work with you both. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.